what my sound preferences are. I like bass. And if it can have quantity and quality, yeah, I'm rocking it. Especially mid bass. I like the slam over the sub bass rumble. I like my mids super clean. Not a big fan of overly colored, overly thick, overly warm mids. Not a big fan of that. And highs that are very sweet and seem to be able to keep up without ever being overbearing or in your face. So today is a bit of a fun one. Interesting, and if you've read the title, it might have made you a bit curious. Before I get into talking about the GAUDIO Labs Todi, I want to do some music impressions and talk to you about a couple different IMs here. Bear with me. Sing This All Together, the Rolling Stones. What I heard was some great layering of instrumental. I get great width, image placement, very nice 3D staging. But what stood out to me was the timbre of the instrumentals for the guitar and the cowbells, as well as the natural sounding vocals in this track. With or without you, you too. Definitely a bit of bass bleed into the lower mids, actually more than a little, to thicken up Bono's vocals. Not in an unpleasant way, but noticeably colored. I'm the Only One by Melissa Etheridge. I wouldn't mind a little bit more bite to her guitar, and vocals for a more correct replay. It plays back with a more relaxed presentation in the music. It makes you get pulled into the music. All My Friends Are Here, Joe Satriani. Great width, but with very little depth of stage, as I know this recording is done with. Ascending A major riff was just okay. I think this IM could do better with 6-string guitars, and there wasn't just enough upper mids for that presentation. I'm going to switch over to a different one. Okay? In My Heart by Youngsan Na. Oh my, vocals. Pitch perfect female vocals. So bang on and just mesmerizing. It was a much less thick presentation than the other one. deep organic bass, smooth articulate top end, and very nicely balanced. Over the Rainbow by Melody Gardot. Live in Europe version. I am 20 meters back, center stage, and I'm sitting down. So wonderful how this IM can just disappear and transport you to being there and feeling what the music can bring out emotionally wise. Let's do some male vocals. Wonder Woman by John Legend. My comments are perfect male vocals. Very, very difficult for an IM to do fantastic male vocals, fantastic female vocals. There's either too much, not enough. It's that balance that is very, very rare. And this IM can do that. Double Cello Concerto, movement number 1. Tina Gao. Strings are wonderful, articulate, clean, detailed, resolving, and natural sounding. It just has a very beautiful top end. Okay, 2 different complete presentations, 2 different sounding IMs. And here's the kicker. It's the same IM. I'm talking about the Todi. This video is named A Lesson in Sources. So let's just start off by saying if you're not a source believer, then you need to buy this IM because it will make you a believer. This Todi is one of the very, very rare IMs that follow the source so articulately, so differently, and can transform its sound signature. It's monitor-like, but musical. And let's get into a little bit of the details. So I'm not going to go into all the flowery stuff on the internet marketing, but they do say that they're kind of sculpted over, like a high-end luxury car. Like, I mean, it does kind of look like a Ferrari red with a badge on it. I'm just saying Porsche, maybe. And the shells are beautiful, kind of like this black lacquer, but if you put them up to the light, you can kind of see inside. The nozzles, the shape of this IM is really well done. And I talk a lot about nozzle, not just length, but the direction and the angle that it goes in. And this is one of these IMs that has the nozzle angled back, and it goes naturally up into your ear, and you can get a deeper fit. They are so comfortable for me, and I think for a lot of people, because that nozzle is angled up and in, not hitting the back of your ear like this. So they're gorgeous. The cable itself says it's just a copper cable, but it looks like an SPC, and it's modular. So enough about that. What I do want to talk to you about is the configuration. It uses 2 small little dynamic drivers, and this is done in a very unique configuration. This is done in a genuine isobaric configuration, in a push-push. Now, I have talked about in the past where we see absolute ton of chi-fi calling this isobaric with 2 drivers facing each other. That is not isobarically. 2 drivers isobarically need to work together, not against each other, as that is. And this is working like this, right? So the 2 are helping each other control code movement. That's the kicker about isobaric designs. You get lower distortion, you get better control, you get better efficiency and dynamics. And yes, this is done that way. The drivers themselves and so there's 2 dynamic drivers in a push-push isobaric configuration, and 2 Knowles BA for upper upper highs and ultra highs. One thing I noticed about these is that there is no venting in the shell. And normally that's a red flag for me, because you go driver flex and pressure buildup. It just doesn't exist. I don't know what they did, but they're talking about some kind of chamber to control the output of the dynamic drivers and the BAs. But whatever is special mojo going on inside of this, I don't get any driver flex, I don't get any pressure buildup. So GAUDIO Labs, you did good, whatever you did. Those double balanced armatures, and if I pull up this graph, and this is the whole trip about this IM, is that has that 8K peak. And in my gamut, using this IM and enjoying this IM, it wasn't always the case. It's that 8K peak, if you're sensitive to that, is going to cause you issues. And this is where my kind of journey started. I started off on the Ibasso DX180. It's a very clean, very neutral sounding DAP. And then I switched over to the Astle & Kern Con Max. And I found it, the Todi, just the mids were too recessed and it was just too bright. That 8K was a spike in my head. Then I went to the Shandling M5 Ultra, much warmer, nicer bass, better balanced, and it was a very good pairing. And that was the audio impressions of that first IM that I was mentioning. It thickens up the mids. It has tons of bass bleed, too much sometimes. Was quite interesting. And then I switched over to the Onyx XM5 DAP, and it was just too much bass added in, too thick, too boomy, not a great sounding combination. And I'll say this again, the Todi is very monitor-like with picking up the character of your source. And it's a chameleon. It's a very interesting thing. If you did not give this thing some attention, some effort, your impressions will be way off different from mine. And let's keep going because I think that's a really important note. There is some overall characteristics of the Todi. So I think bass is slightly elevated a bit and does have a really nice mixture of sub-bass rumble and mid-bass punch with those small dynamic drivers. Though not the speediest drivers, I found they actually do sound like they have big driver mentality, like big 15s in a ported enclosure. That's what they sound like. Now, here's something. On my go-to source, the Ibasso DC Elite, I absolutely adore that source. The Todis were bagging out. Okay, as you turned it up, you could hear the drivers distort. And then when I switched over to the M5 Ultra, the Shandling, on high gain, 1100 milliwatts of power, the Todi sucked it up and just woke up and loved the power and loved the dynamics and the control and the headroom that DAP and that amp section belts out. So for me, that was one of the first really interesting observations, that it really seemed like the Todi liked that in an amp. On the DC Elite, it just obviously didn't have enough power to push this dynamics-wise and headroom-wise to where they needed to go. And it's funny because on the lower power, you could hear the amp run out of juice on the DC Elite, where at 5 times the power output on high gain, the Shandling was in perfect control, and it was a wonderful presentation. So, I mean, I was ready to write this notes. I was speaking with Tony Arcos, and he also mentioned that these things, the drivers bag out, and I don't think that's the Todi. I think that's your source. I know that's your source. But if you didn't, 14 sources, that's how many I used to get to my end conclusion. Let's talk about the mids. They play a bit back in the mix. And this was interesting notes because it's all wrong. And there is some parts that are correct, though. The timbre and the tonality of vocals, including female and male vocals, both sound spot on, as did instrumental. That part stays linear and true, but the mids, playing forwards or backwards in the mids, that's your source. And that's what I found out. So yeah, hugely, ultimately dependent on the right source with enough power to drive this IM. And that is how you're either going to hear this correctly or you're not going to get the way it was tuned and meant to be heard, I think. So that 8K peak. So here's another false note. Because that 8K peak is real, and I actually do think it is real, and is present. Here's the graph. But I don't care about the graph. So treble-sensitive people might have a problem with that area, depending on your source. And we'll be able to pick up some sibilants and some BA timbre with bursts of splashiness, especially with poorly recorded music, and more so at high volumes. And for that statement is true, but not on all sources. It was so source dependent. For me, when I was listening to it with the DC Elite, when I was listening to the Ibasso DX180, and especially with the Con Max, it was borderline tolerable. I didn't like the extra sharpness to the high notes on the trailing edges of the high notes, like cymbal strikes and hi-hats. It was like right? It was just that extra that didn't sound right. I will tell you straight up, the Todi has something special sauce going on that other IMs do not offer. There is something special the way the Todi plays back the mids. The first thing I mentally noted, regardless of source, was how the Todi just replayed the music. It has an effortless, natural quality, very much in control most of the time, again, unless I was turning it up and it didn't give it enough power where it was starting to distort. It has one of the most engrossing mids I have heard to date. And being able to reproduce it in an IM that naturally. If not for the occasional hit, I love these notes because they're right and they're wrong as I went through this process. If not for an occasional hit of splashiness on the top end treble distracting me from turning it up. And then as I went through more and more, listening to more and more, playing with different sources, I realized again that statement is not true. What was true was I certainly needed to turn this unit up to wake the bass up. And then that statement, again, I crossed off because it's not true. And then I went to a whole different section of EQing down that 8K to get rid of the splashiness. So I went through that gamut too. It's like, okay, what if I put it on EQ? And I came with this kind of conclusion. The Todi offers enough of a unique sound signature to warrant a closer look. This IM is $1,500, so it's not a cheap fare, right? If you're treble sensitive to that 8K region and you've got one source, you might be in trouble. You might not like this IM. Or if you're willing to source roll now and put the effort into dialing in the Todi, you can be rewarded with something very, very engrossing and very unique in its presentation. The Todi is an excellent, excellent IM. And I do think it won't be for everyone, because there are people that will pick this up, throw it on their one player, their DAP, and go, oh God, no, that's not for me. They're listening to their source more so than they are this IM. There is that big conversation. There's source believers and non-source believers. People who believe that the IM is the end-all of be-all of the chain, and there are people that are the sources are your end-all and be-all of what you're going to hear. And in this particular case, I think it's more of the source side of things than it is the IM, the Todi, that can do that. This is a truly special IM. It's unique, and that isobaric double dynamic drivers will give you a mid. Again, that does 80% of the entire musical range. Something different you may have not heard before, and done in a very, very cool and musical, special way. What the Todi needs that I found, it needs a powerful amp with lots of headroom and dynamics. A source with good control over the top end to tame that 8K peak, not boosted in any way. A clean mid-range, maybe a bit forward, was great, with a touch of warmth, but not too much, because then it gets too thick in the bottom end. And maybe some bass enhancement, but again, it would rather benefit from a snappier bottom end. How did I get to Nirvana with the Todi? For me, it was, here's a picture, using my little Shanling M1 Plus as my transport. Goes out to a DD Hi-Fi USB cable into the back of a Gishelli Labs, the new one, the J3 Pro, running single-ended with a Sparkos SS2590 Pro op amp into my Topping A90D. Using the stock cable, and I'm using the Pen-On Liquor tips. No bass relief with these tips, so, and again, I'll go back to that, a full bottom end, really nice. Tips also made a massive difference with this IM as well. Crazy high maintenance IM, absolutely source dependent. A complete lesson in sources. And tips. The one thing I never did switch out was the cable. I think the cable is fantastic. It was a perfect pairing. Just as a copper cable, I loved it. No SPC. I didn't need any extra on the top end. For me, I am a bit treble sensitive. But with that combination, that source chain, wow, wonderful. That 8K is gone. Never heard it. Can turn it up loud. Bass is tight. Bass is clean. No bass bleed. Beautifully rendered mids. And done again in a very, very, very special way. And the top end is detailed, and the nuances and the stage also is fantastic. So that's what I ended up with for my impressions of this IAM. Again, I listen to a lot of different IMs, and I'm sure glad that I spent the time on this one, and also from help from Kevin, part of our Canucks Audioholics, right? This is his IM, so thank you for buying it and sharing it with me. If I didn't spend that much time on this IM, I would have come and dismissed it fairly quickly. Like it would make my ears ring. It would do all kinds of things. I think I'm quite sensitive to 8K and 9K, 10K area. Where on that chain, fantastic, zero issues, beautiful presentation. Very cool. I'm glad I got to share this with you. And if you're thinking about picking it up, just remember all the things that I said. You're going to need, if you have a source that can do what I did there, then fantastic, you're in good shape. But remember, at $1,500, if you don't, and you've got one DAB, one source, this might not be for you. And I don't want you to spend $1,500 and go, well, the Tone Deaf Monk is an ass, because it certainly doesn't sound like what he described. You can have on every single one of these sources, this is a different IM. It is that unique. The only other IM that does what this did is the Plunge Audio Unity. That uses 4 Sonyan BAs. This uses 2 dynamic drivers in a very unique configuration, and that's its special sauce, because it is doing something different that you probably haven't heard before. I probably wouldn't have used the Knowles or tuned them maybe a little bit different in this IM if I was doing the tuning, but there is no doubt that this IM has indeed some special sauces. So more than one sauce, I guess so. This Tone Deaf Monk, thank you for allowing me to share this IM, and I've got much stuff on the go. So coming up next, I'm going to talk about that Jashelli Labs J3 Pro DAC.